Good evening, everyone, and welcome to an excellent 1 hour discussion up ahead of us on the future of business, in particular, the future of innovation going forward. As you all know, India is coming out of a painful lockdown period, and for the last 2.5 months or so, the main focus was on risk management, how to keep people at home, work from home, how to keep frontline health workers safe, how to help migrant laborers get home, give them food, healthcare, so on and so forth. Now, as we come out of lockdown, the focus is coming back to livelihood and, in particular, innovation. How should companies innovate as they go ahead? What are some areas opening up for startups in terms of new areas to explore? What is the investor outlook for innovation in this space? And how can they all work together? How can corporate startups and investors align their initiatives and agendas to move ahead? So we have three outstanding speakers today. All of them have experience not just in innovation, but in international innovation. So this is not just about what's happening in the India market, but what can Indian entrepreneurs and creators do to tap into the global market by using innovation. So first up, we have Madhurima Agarwal, who is the director in engineering and the leader at NetApp Accelerator. That's an accelerator who aims to be excellent. That's why it's called Accelerator. She's an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad, has over 17 years of experience in this field, spread across enterprises and startups. So she's been an entrepreneur and also worked in the financial sector. She's also an advisor to the WIT group, the Women in Technology group at NetApp, and she's also a prolific writer. Welcome aboard, Madhurima. Joining us also, we have Chinnu Senthil Kumar, who's a general partner and CTO. That's right, CTO at Xfinity Venture Partners, which is an enterprise tech-focused VC fund, which has an emphasis on the US-India corridor. His extensive experience with a range of startups won the National Technology Award from India's president at the young age of 21, graduated from University of Utah, Salt Lake City, and the College of Engineering, Guindy in Chennai. He earlier was at Intel, SanDisk, and Texas Instruments and holds 9 US patents. We'll come to the patent issue in the course of the discussion. We also have joining us Latika Pai, who's the country head at Microsoft for Startups. This is an international region covering Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia. They work in particular with Series A funded B2B startups. She was earlier at Nortel, American Management Systems, acquired by CGI later, and also a $300 million funded startup called Relera, which was in the cloud and managed services space. She's on the board of a number of tech firms and also is the founder of Sonder Connect, a support network for women entrepreneurs. So we have three outstanding panelists. Once again, we have Madhurima, Chinnu, and Latika joining us. We have a round of questions for about 45-50 minutes, and then we turn to questions from the audience. So a big welcome once again to the audience. Thanks to the team at Brand8 for the excellent production of this event, and thanks especially in advance to all our speakers. So my first question for all the panelists, maybe we can begin with Madhurima, is let's begin with the big COVID question in everyone's minds. Is this the right time for an entrepreneur to start up? Is this the right time for a corporate to get into an innovation agenda? And is this the right time for investors to be looking for new ideas? So what is your take? What's your advice on, is this a good time to start up and fundraise? Over to you, Madhurima.
Thanks, Madan. Starting up is never easy and it's never extremely difficult, I would say. So, if to the question whether this is a good time to start up, I would say any time is a good time when one feels that they are ready to start up. In fact, there are studies which say that startups that could thrive through the difficult times are the ones that, were successful in the long run. So if you're anyways entering in a difficult market, you're testing yourself, you're going through the toughest time. So that improves the odds of success. So in short, I would say yes. If you're ready, if you have an idea that you think has great potential, just start. Don't wait.
And this applies to people of all ages, including the young person next to you, I guess. Latika, what's your take on this? You're from Microsoft, one of the big top 10 tech firms in the planet. So what's your take on how should companies be looking at innovation, whether you're a startup or a corporate? Latika?
So it's a two-pronged question, right? One for startups. I think, having been an entrepreneur myself 4 times around, I've always said picking myself up from the ashes and rising is something that every entrepreneur needs to do. And that's what, I've personally done. I think anytime one is boxed into a corner, you kind of start thinking afresh, you start thinking about what you can do. That's really about the whole entrepreneurial bent, is right, seeking opportunity in terms of in adversity. So that's from a startup angle. From a corporate perspective, I think now is the time. It's really, really important that corporates start looking at how to engage with innovation. In the past, with shrinking budgets, challenge in terms of retaining people, just I mean that's the way the businesses are going. The only way to survive and get ahead is through technology and through innovation. And how do you do it? It is by engaging with startups. So to me, it really is a time for both the startups and the corporates to start thinking differently and kind of moving faster in terms of their innovation plans.
Okay. And how about you, Chinu? You're an investor. You're the guy with the money. What's your tips for startups
Thank
in
you.
this day and age?
So I think both Madhurima and Latika has done my job a little easier. And, there is no good or bad time to start up. So I'll echo the same words. But I think, in addition to that, in times like this, which is going to a new normal, there are new opportunities are opening up. And if you look at work from home, that opened up a plethora of opportunities in terms of cybersecurity. How do you loosen your, firewalls? There are so many opportunities around work from home. And similarly, I'm sure all of us must have been noticing that supply chain is being disrupted, not only from China, from all over the world. So there are a lot of opportunities popping up, from that side. And another thing, actually, countries all over the world, they are challenged by the healthcare infrastructure, actually. So telemedicine, any investment in that area. So there are a lot of mega trends are opening up. So I'll echo what both Madhurima and Latika has said. It's a good time to start, or any time is a good time to start. That's what I would say. As far as investment, as we speak, about 2 weeks back, we invested in one company, which came in the newspapers, and we are actively looking to invest.
Oh, that's good news, I'm sure, to all the entrepreneurs in the audience. Let's now take a look at how corporates and startups can work together. So maybe, Latika, I should ask you first, how does the accelerator work in the case of Microsoft, perhaps? How does it benefit startups? What's in it for startups to work with a company like Microsoft? And how is Microsoft benefiting from the energy and ideas of young entrepreneurs?
Thanks, Madan. So our program, Microsoft for Startups, is really has a three-pronged approach in terms of how we engage with startups. So unlike many out there who are engaging at a breadth perspective in terms of the number of startups engaged with, Microsoft for Startups, our strategy is extremely focused in terms of how we engage with them. We look at typically B2B startups. We do engage with certain B2C startups, but as Microsoft for Startups, the B2B startups, we give them three things. One is, if they are market ready, how do we get them to enterprise ready from a technology perspective? How can we help them scale? Second is, we do a business deep dive with them in terms of understanding where and how they would like to scale. Is it, are they geography bound? Are they looking to scale here in India? Are they looking to scale outside the country? Third, which is the most important part and value addition, which I think is, again, having been a founder, I think is just a very, very powerful offering that Microsoft has, is actually taking our B2B startups to our enterprise clients. So in this, when I talk about corporates looking at how to innovate and how to engage with startups, we do that. That's exactly what we do. We have a very strong co-sell, motion by what. For example, if we have a fintech startup and they have sold into a ICICI bank, how do we then help that startup go to all the other banks, not just here in India, potentially, take them to Deutsche Bank in Germany, to DBS in Singapore. And that co-sell motion is what I think is most attractive to startups. So again, when we at Microsoft Startups work with, we, like you mentioned earlier, Madan, the C to Series A, that's really the value proposition. That's what, I've been extremely busy with startups looking at, saying that, okay, how do we engage them with corporates who need innovation right now, and how do we kind of find them the solutions that they're looking for?
Thanks, Latika. Very good to hear how you're giving them an international gateway. In your case, Madhurima, how does it work? What do you see as the pluses and advantages for startups and corporates to collaborate? Madhurima, in your case, how do startups and your company collaborate through your accelerator, for example?
Ours accelerator is very similar to Microsoft, startup program, and I'll tell you on what parameters. So first is we are also B2B, so we work with B2B tech product startups. We help startups on three sides, right? One is the product, second is the customer, and third is Investor Connects. And when I say product, it is like we help the startups. How do they make their product scalable? How do they make it enterprise grade? How do they make sure that it is, able to handle the kind of scalability that selling to the global market would require, right? So that's where our technical mentors come in. So each startup gets assigned some technical mentors, and they work closely with them on the product side, on the backend side, on the architecture side, and helps them. Once that is done and there is enough confidence amongst the NetApp community that this startup is somebody who can solve problems for our clients as well, so that's where our sales teams comes in, and we help them with customer access. In some cases we've done joint go to market. For example, there was a startup called Zscore, right? And they were in the area of sifting the good data and the bad data, and we took them to Australia, and there now they are working with joint marketing happening for them with NetApp, and they are getting access to some of our clients in Australia, and vice versa. Even they are taking us to their clients, right, where there is a need for infrastructure, where there is a need for NetApp solutions. So that's it. And the third is Investor Connects. So startups that are looking to raise funds, we help them with a warm introduction to our investor friends, Chinu being one of them, right? So we work with them just till the introduction stage, and then it is between the investor and the startup to take the conversation forward. If there are instances where the investors have come back to us and asked us how our experience has been, right, in terms of a potential client for a startup, and we've been happy to give that. So these are the three areas that we help the startup with: the product, the customer, and the Investor Connects. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Madhurima and Latika. Both of you gave some very good examples of startups in this space. Maybe towards the end of the session, I'll ask both of you to type in a few links where the audience can get some more information on your accelerator programs and some case studies of startups who have come through. So one common question I have both of you before we move on to Chinu is, what are some success factors for startups and corporates to work together? The cultures are so different, the aims, ambitions are so different, the working style, the mindset. So how do you get this to work? Latika, you want to start?
So, it depends really on which country you're looking at, right? In the US, innovation, working with startups is something that is very common, and decision makers like to work with startups. And I think globally, what's also changing, Madan, is it's no longer the CIO who's the only decision maker in terms of technology, right? In the past, what would happen is every department would give their requirements to the CIO. The CIO would figure out which team would work on what. So, a customer service would give their requirements, finance would give their requirements, marketing would give the requirements. Today, this has changed. Today, the chief marketing officer wants to be able to look and get data about whom he or she wants to market to. They want a solution. They start engaging with the startup directly, right? They don't need to go to the CIO to make a decision really and kind of wait in line for 9 months or maybe even a year to get what they're looking for. So the beauty about today's world is that there are so many niche solutions available that each CXO can get what they want. So I think it really depends on the individual, right? It's no longer as much as the entire org. The mantra is, we are agile, we like tech, we like to innovate. We are entrepreneurs. I hear all the buzzwords and the right things being said. But when I ask the CXOs and say, okay, great, how many of you all are actually engaging with startups? And very sheepishly, very few of them do that. So I think this is really something that I also personally work very, very hard on in terms of talking to CXOs to say that truly you have nothing to lose in terms of engaging with the startup. Coming back to the geographies, right? In India, it's very, very challenging for a SaaS startup to kind of go in and sell. first and foremost, this whole thing about, oh, I can throw, 4 programmers at it. They call their chief technical architect and he says, yes, boss, I can do it and it'll take me 3 months. What they don't realize is that people like Gino and VCs are investing millions of dollars in an idea, not because 3 to 4 people can recreate it, right? There's deep domain knowledge that is required. There's deep investment in out there in terms of making it happen, right? So the first thing is that you have to drop that baggage that 3 to 4 programmers can do what that startup can do. That's the first thing from an Indian perspective. And second thing is constantly trying to, lower the prices down. It again, for a startup to come here in India and sell to an Indian corporate, whether it's an 100 crore to 1,000 crore, right? Again, it's always saying, oh, you're too expensive, right? So a startup tends to say, why would I waste time here? Let me just go and set up base in the US and go and sell, because for every sale that I do, I get 5x of what I'm trying to do. So and this is something that I fear, that if Indian corporates keep they are missing out on what we are developing for the rest of the world. So Indian corporate CXOs have to wake up and say that, why am I not grasping what is being made available to me right here in my backyard, right? They hear about it only after the fact that the company's done extremely well, in the US or European markets. So it truly is a mindset of the leadership that has to change, and to say, okay, I need something, I'm willing to try. And really what you lose is not that much, right? You can get POCs done for $25,000, $50,000. That's the beauty about it. You're not really wasting months and months of effort that is going to cause you, cause your business a lot of grief. So that's my take in terms of saying that how do you get corporates to start engaging with startups and adopting innovation.
Thanks, Latika. Very good insights from misconceptions and myths that exist in the field and how to get around them. In your case, Madhurima, how smooth is it to get this alignment going between corporates and startups?
Yeah, so Latika, great perspective. To your question that you had, Madan, right? And I want to spend a little bit time around that, because they are different cultures. How do you make that experience, frictionless? How do you make sure that, and I call them like, the adults and the toddlers, how do they get together and walk at the same pace, right? That's essentially what we are trying to do here, make, the enterprises and the startups work together. And I think that's where the innovation programs help, because they kind of act as a bridge. And if it's a program that, kind of has folks who have, understanding of how startups work, who can, empathize with how 6 months in a startup's time, it can probably be a lifetime, where it's just like, a blink of an eye in the eyes of an enterprise, right? So be sensitive to that and accordingly educate folks inside the enterprise as well as those on the startup side, so that they can probably empathize with each other and help, right? So we have seen that has helped in our case. Also for it's very important to set the expectations right when the startups come in to work with the bigger organizations, their understanding of how this might work out versus how it actually works out can be very, very different, right? And that's where setting the expectation helps, because then accordingly they can allocate their manpower, they can accordingly manage their cash flows, build it, what can be expected and stuff. So I think that's a few things that if taken care of, getting the expectation right, having a dedicated team, whether you call it an innovation program or you call it something else, that helps because they keep the focus there and make sure that folks don't get distracted amongst other things, right? It's very easy for somebody within a big organization to forget that a startup is waiting for, let's say, a PO, or waiting for that kind of data to move to the next step in their analysis or whatever they are delivering. So making sure that somebody is on top of it and tracking it and it doesn't get lost in the daily firefighting, that makes it very smooth for the corporates to engage with the startups. So I think these small things, but go a long way in making sure that the engagement is there, making sure that whatever support is needed by the startup to proceed and navigate the corridors of a corporate, that helps.
Great, thanks. Let's turn to Chinu now. Chinu, we've just heard that expectations and focus are very important so that corporates and startups can work together. Why don't you tell us a bit more about the enterprise tech space for startups and your take on IP and how important IP is for you as an investor when you look at startups? And in your portfolio, how do all these factors play out? Chinu?
So, thank you, Madan. Actually, both Latika and Madhurima articulated very well. And actually, if I look at the accelerators in India, they have been doing fabulous job, and I have been seeing their evolution for the last 5 years. And because if you look at 5 years back when we started the fund, 5-6 years back, we used to get deals by ourselves. We used to search for it. We used to go out and find deals. But I think now they have made our job very easy because there are many accelerators coming up in India. It could be retail focused, it could be cybersecurity focused, or NetApp focused. Basically the companies are realizing that they cannot innovate everything inside. So basically they have set up all these accelerators in different parts of the world, and they are starting to look for solution from these companies actually. So that's a ready-made source for me to find deals. If I have to invest, I don't need to go too far and search for deals actually. So if I visit all the accelerators in India or maybe US, I get good number of companies, then I start my evaluation. So it's curated. And I think both Madhurima and Latika have said, they do a lot of curation for us actually. It goes through a proper process. They help them a lot. And they actually even find ready-made customers. In fact, all the big corporates now, they ask a BU to sign up before they start investing, small amount or big amount actually. So that means they are true customers actually. So basically, if you look at in a startup, the difficult part is finding a right customer actually. So we try to do a lot of CXO connects actually. But if I go through a accelerator curated company, this makes my job very easy actually, right? And I think second thing, what I have been noticing, if you look at most of the Silicon Valley companies, they have set up accelerator or in the process of setting up, and entrepreneurs may or may not know about it. My suggestion to entrepreneurs who are listening to this audio or video is see where is your fit, because that's the first checkpoint to see who is your customer actually. So you go around, talk to accelerators, and go through the journey. That will help you to narrow your focus. And second, actually, all these accelerators also, they sharpen your GTM actually, because you are talking to a true customer. Because, startup, like Latika said, it's not just idea of putting 3-4 programmers together actually. So in fact, a good startup thinks the day one, whom I am going to sell it actually. If I'm going to exit 3-5-6 years down the road, I should be knowing the roadmap of 5-6 companies whom I am going to sell it, where are the technical or roadmap gaps, then I should work backwards actually. I think in that journey, actually, accelerator has been filling up the gap very well actually. And I like to see more. But I think one area where I don't see much happening, the India-based companies, they should start corporate venture funds. Also, they should set up accelerators for their own needs actually. That is one gap which is there. But I think if I look at many of the Silicon Valley companies or even like European companies, they are finding this to be very, very useful. And India is one of the biggest spot, Bangalore or they're expanding their accelerators actually. And coming to the IP, you talked about it actually. See, if you look at India's journey, like in investment, about 10-15 years, the investment has been predominantly into private equity, like ports, road infrastructure like that. About 10 years back, it's shifted to companies like Flipkart, which is predominantly B2C. In the last 5 to 6 years, in fact, we are the first fund to start in India, which is completely B2B focused. We felt there is enough talent in India, but only thing which was missing is the market access and market understanding. Sitting from India, it was very difficult for entrepreneurs to look at the market outside of India actually. So we started, bridging this gap. That's why when you told that we are a US Indo corridor, because the market is still in US outside of India actually. So we put a lot of premium on IP because we are a very IP driven. In fact, all our companies together, we have invested in 23 companies. They have filed more than 150 patents actually. And IPs help in two ways. One, actually, outside market values IPs coming out of India. And I'm sure both Madhurima and Latika would agree that. And the second thing is actually when you do an exit, IP is a part of it actually. So if you have an IP, whether it is an up round or exit, definitely it commands premium actually. So in the B2B, we look at a lot of entrepreneurs with PhD background, domain experience with 10-year, 15-year experience. So IP is very, very important for us actually.
Thanks so much, Chinu. The word accelerator has come up many times in the discussion so far. So my next question to our speakers, Latika and Madhurima, is how do you see this accelerator model evolving? The traditional model used to be X number of startups get into a cohort or a batch for Y number of months, and then they graduate. There's a big demo day. They invite VCs like Chinu to come, and then they pick which ones to invest in, and so on and so forth. So are people moving away from the cohort model, or are they speeding up more cohorts? Are cohorts going international? Are they going virtual? What are some changes in the traditional cohort model? You want to start, Latika?
Yeah.
Sure. So, we've actually graduated already. We call it Microsoft for Startups. And our model has been that we have about 10 locations worldwide, Madan. And the reality is that each startup today, the ones that we work with, which are seed to Series A, they tend to have a different set of requirements. So we'll end up doing more of a bespoke engagement with each one of the startups than necessarily with, working with them through a cohort. Because I think there are several other accelerators kind of going through the different areas of earlier stage startups, right? So for us, it's very focused in the terms of how we are engaging with them, which is we do a build with, which is we look at the technology, look at how we can help them, optimize and leverage what Microsoft has. 2, we do help them with their marketing, and 3, the co-sell opportunity. So we haven't, we've moved away from the cohort based. And the one thing is with Microsoft, please understand this is a very, very, this is not evangelism that we're doing, right? For us, this is a business, because the startups that we engage with move to Azure, and only if they move to Azure do we actually help them, go with the rest of the program, which is listing on our marketplace and taking them to our enterprise customers. So as the startup grows and scales up, their Azure consumption increases, or the enterprise client to whom we sell to who is on Azure, that Azure consumption increases. So for us, it's clearly about the fact that the growth of a startup is very linked to our business, and so it's not a question of at the end of 4 months they leave us and they go. We have at least 7 groups within Microsoft who engage with startups based on the stage that they are. So the first point of engagement is my team, which is Microsoft for Startups. Then we have, as they graduate from our program, we have the startup pod that engages with them. Then we have another group within Microsoft, which looks and says, okay, there is a managed partner list, which is a very, very a coveted list to get on in terms of how they engage. So for us, it's definitely, we have moved away from the, the 4-month engagement cohort, and we don't do any demo days, per se, because it's a permanent, longer term engagement. That's the reason why we don't work with the thousands of startups. We work with this year as Microsoft for Startups, we would be working with about 250, where we do a deep engagement with them in terms of where we are. We planning to increase those numbers significantly. And so again, this is just my group that I'm talking about. So across the board, we'll have several hundreds of startups in other groups of Microsoft. So that's how we have evolved from the typical accelerator model.
So,
Madhurima, yeah. How about
yeah,
you?
so Madan, we are right at that transition point, I would say. So we still have a construct of having 4 months and cohort based, and it's difficult to just get away from that overnight, because that's how the processes has been. However, what has happened now is that as we see, 4 months, okay, it's just a timeline. That doesn't mean that you have the demo day, you graduate, and you go away with from us. The engagement still continues. And what this 4 months really is, to give you an analogy, it's more like a courtship period. So where we get to know the startup gets to know us. It's fairly complex, right? Figuring out what's the best fit, within NetApp for them to do a POC, or who could be their client, or who are the clients that we can take them to. So that's the discovery phase, this 4 months really. And as Latika said, it's you do these deep dives, you understand, and it's only after you have that understanding that the real fun starts, so to say. So that's there. In terms of moving, evolving, yes, that is natural, right? When we started 3 years ago, we were working with very, very early stage startups, right? Those still have the product in place, but that's essentially what they were. But over time, if you see, we have moved forward in terms of the maturity of the startups that we engage with, purely because now the sales angle has become much stronger, right? And if you're taking them to other corporates or enterprises, you need that maturity. So that has happened, and I think as we move forward in this journey, evolution is the only constant, so to say, that we aim to do. So what started out as something that was fostering innovation in the ecosystem, for us, for NetApp Accelerator, today it's much more business aligned. We look for startups that are in the areas around hybrid cloud, automation, MI, machine learning, artificial intelligence, all these IoT. That's where the future lies. So we look for those startups and engaging with them beyond the 4 months for sure. And soon I think we'll move to a rolling sourcing model as well, which is anytime we find a good startups, we'll engage with them and continue that.
Thanks so much. We are now about halfway through our program now. We have another half an hour or so of Q&A on this topic of innovations and accelerator and corporate and startup cooperation. We also have a section on the Your Story website called Startup Hatch, which talks about trends in accelerators, incubators, maker spaces, co-working spaces, and so on. Now, another very interesting trend in this space is the rise of hackathons and prizes and competitions to engage with startups. So even if startups don't engage with corporates through a structured accelerator kind of a program, they can also take part in a hackathon, or a company will set a challenge like we had during the COVID era, challenges to startups to solve apps for safe distancing, so on and so forth. A number of VCs also have launched some of their own hackathons and competitions and so on. So my next question to all of you, and maybe we can start with Madhurima this time, is how are you engaging with startups outside of the accelerator model? Are you doing hackathons, or what are your observations of this model in general? Madhurima?
So we don't do hackathons usually, right? Not for startups, because the kind of startups that we are looking for, right? We want them to have that product in place. We want them to have some early traction, and we don't see that target segment usually going in for hackathons. Having said that, right, we do sponsor certain programs or events where these are happening, and that is purely for us, from a discovery point of view, so that we know what's happening in the market, who could be the next potential in the pipeline for us, kind of thing. But in terms of finding startups that we want to engage with, for us, we've not done much on the hackathon side. But the events, the startup ecosystem events, I think they are great, because you get to meet now probably virtually, but you get to meet and figure out, a lot of startups who you otherwise would not have if you just go through the standard channels.
How about in your case, Latika? I remember Microsoft was a partner for, I think, startup weekends. It used to be these weekend-long, intense bootcamp kind of hackathon sessions, etc. So what's Microsoft doing in this space of hackathons, competitions, prizes, challenges, and so on?
So like I mentioned, Madan, we have several groups within Microsoft that engages in innovation and with startups. So we have hackathons that happen all year round. We have the Microsoft Garage, which does workshops and really, really innovative, cool stuff with people who are looking to be entrepreneurs, and kind of giving them that opportunity. So globally, we also work with students. We have the Imagine Cup that we are very proud of hosting every year. So for us, pushing innovation and introducing innovation to engineers, developers, in every aspect of life is something that we do on a daily basis, right? That is really, really pervasive. So I think that's the beauty about being a part of a large corporate like Microsoft, because there's so much going on, at the same time. But the good news is we all, work together, right? We know when there's a hackathon happening that is maybe of interest to our startups, we kind of make sure that everybody knows about it. So today it's really, again, everybody working together in terms of how do you innovate and how do you help in innovation.
And how about you, Chinu? You got a very interesting background. You're part techie, but you're also part investor. So is this whole model of hackathons and competitions of appeal to investors as well?
Oh, definitely. I think, the way I look at it is the world is moving more towards open innovation compared to 20 years back. If you look at 20 years back, a lot of companies try to invent, but even big companies recognize, like be it Intel or Microsoft or IBM, they realize that you have to look outside for solutions, actually, because many times you can get the solutions very quickly. And second, actually, you also get a larger perspective. When you talk about a hackathon, you get customer feedback from thousands of people for a particular product, actually, right? So it is actually, it's helping in many ways, actually. And I would say it's a healthy trend. Actually, it is happening more in India. And we have a large techie community, developer community, or student community. So whenever you have these kind of hackathons or competition, actually, a lot of students participate. It shapes the product very well, actually. So I definitely see as a good, a good way to strengthen our ecosystem in India, actually.
Great. So before we open up to the floor to questions from the audience, I've got one last question for each of you. You briefly mentioned open innovation just now, Chinu. So this whole model of open innovation has been with us for almost 15, 20 years. And some interesting twists are emerging, such as crowdsourcing. We've seen companies like Innocentive pose challenges for companies, and they can answer the problems faced by big companies and so on. So there's lots of twists and turns to this whole model of open innovation. So maybe I'll start with you, Latika. What do you see as the future of open innovation? Where is it going? How much more open will it be? How much more innovative will the very process of innovation change?
See, I think, it's really fascinating about how people are now all coming together to exchange ideas and really leverage the work that's being done globally. So I see this as more and more collaboration happening, between teams in the Ukraine and teams in India and programmers who are passionate. The beauty about programmers are that they are, for the most part, purists, right? They would just want to see their technology work. They want to see their code being used by hundreds of thousands, millions, right? That's the beauty about technologies. And I really am excited about the fact that today more and more people are, more and more technologists are looking to collaborate with each other versus saying, oh, this is my IP and I want to keep, stick, and keep it close to me. So that's the beauty about open innovation and where things are going as far as I see it.
And how about you, Madhurima? What is the future of open innovation the way NetApp sees it?
Yeah, so Latika, I absolutely loved your comment about technologists being purist. We see that all the time, right? So yes, I think open innovation is the future of innovation, so to say, right? As we all agreed earlier, right? Not everybody can do all the innovation themselves, and we always, whether it's big corporates or anybody, we always go out to look and partner with others. So that's I think the open innovation is going to define the future, and it's going to stay. Anybody who says that they don't want to do open innovation is just burying their head in the sand. So no options there. Just go for it, and we will.
Yes, go for it. That's a good slogan. What about you, Chinu? How do you see as the future of?
Well, I think definitely. I think both. I echo with what Latika and Madhurima said. I think the way I look at it is, if you look at any product you work on, it is no longer one monolithic product. So you have to bring different kind of talent in a shorter time frame, actually, and this talent lies in spread across globally, actually. So you had to be open-minded. And second, thanks for complimenting the technologists being purist. I was one of them, and I'm still continuing to be one of them. And the technologists, more than the money, what excites them is their code or product getting used actually. So you have to tap into that. And there is a lot of talent available all over the world, within India. And I think, I definitely see even for startups, you have to keep your eyes and ears open, and you can leverage. For example, I was just talking to Madan actually. So for an example, Bosch, they have sponsored 15 fellowships in IIT Madras. So the idea is they will work on masters or PhD in automotive space, autonomous vehicles and so on. So if a company wants to see some student community participating, sponsor some research, and tap into all these labs and universities and all these hackathon events. I think if you're a startup, if you are not part of open innovation, I'd be really concerned actually. That's the way I would say it actually.
Thanks. You mentioned something very interesting right there, the role of academics and government in all of this. So far, we've talked mostly about corporates and startups coming together. I'd like to ask Latika and Madhurima about how are you guys working with academics? Are you working with the IITs of the world? Are you working with IIM? Are you working with government science R&D agencies, government public sector companies, and so on? Latika?
So, Madan, we are working very closely with the governments, both at the state, central, and global governments, right? Last year in September, Microsoft launched the Highway to 100 Unicorns, where we went looking for startups in, the states of Gujarat, Rajasthan, Kerala, Goa, and, Maharashtra, coming out of non-metro, non-Bangalore, Bombay, Delhi, right? The reason is that India today has 30 unicorns. All of them are really coming from Bangalore, Bombay, Delhi for the most part, whereas there is some phenomenal work being done at each of the different states, right? And each of the state governments are investing, tens of crores in terms of trying to activate their ecosystem. So when Microsoft for Startups, we launched this program, it's been just phenomenal in terms of the kind of response we've got, both from the government and the startups. We ran the EmergeX competition, of which, we selected about close to 60 startups. We had about 600 applications coming in. And mind you, the ecosystem has got 15,000 in the 6 states that we went to, right? But like I said, again, Microsoft works with a select number of startups. And of that 64 of them got funded as a result of being part of the EmergeX list. Now, so as far as the government is concerned, I think every government, whether it's the government, if it's Mr. Jayesh Ranjan in Telangana, in Rajasthan, Gujarat, Kerala, Goa, right? Everyone realizes that technology and startups are going to be the workforce of today and of the future, and are investing a lot of money in terms of attracting the startups. That's why Microsoft, we are very, very inclusive. We want to try and work with as many, not just from the funded startups. For me, the fact that we can find startups and get them on, visible, outside of having to come to Bangalore or to go to Delhi in terms of meeting investors like Chino, that really is the power of the program. And yes, the governments are working, and I see this globally. I have about 15 countries I engage with, and everywhere, every government is looking at how do they accelerate what's going on with startups. Of course, here in Karnataka, we've always been way ahead of the game in terms of the programs that the government has. So I believe that this is something that both the governments are doing in terms of engaging and wanting to cultivate and encourage startups.
How about you, Madhurima? You got any partnerships in place? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. As Latika said, right? I mean, we are all part of the ecosystem, and the universities, we have great engagement with them. We engage with IISc, the IITs. They have their e-cells, they have their fests. So apart from that, we also give them research grants from NetApp to do certain areas that they want to do research on. So I think universities are where the minds of the future get shaped. So yes, we do engage with them definitely. Again, governments, right? Especially in India, if you're looking at the largest spender, it's the government, right? So why not make sure that the startups get access to that market, right? So we do work with as NetApp also, we work with the government. The government is a client of ours actually, of NetApp. So whatever potential opportunities we see, for the startups to work with the government in areas that are of focus for the government, especially if you look at like in India today, healthcare, right? I mean, that's top of the mind for governments, and there's a lot of spend that's happening. And the startups that we work with that are in the healthcare sector, so we help with those kind of connects. Also, apart from that, there are a lot of other industry bodies as well, like NASSCOM, TIE, and the others, right? I think they are providing a great platform for the Indian startup ecosystem to develop and grow. Uh, you know, uh, your story is a startup itself, but I think it's much more, right? It's the I don't know, father or mother, what do you call it? With Shraddha being at
Parent,
the help, parent.
parent, yeah.
Yeah. So these are I think great. Outside of the corporates and startups, the other bodies that we definitely engage with. So can't live in silos. I mean, together we win. That's team, right? So I look at it a huge, big team outside of just the immediate surroundings.
Fantastic. Very good range of insights from all of you. Now, as promised, we open up the floor.
Madan,
Oh, sure, jump in.
yeah, one thing I would like to add to Madhurima is that we at Microsoft, we partner with everyone, right? For us, Madhurima and I have discussed how NetApp and, we can partner. We've had a couple of their startups, the Cisco Launchpad, we've had startups come and work with us, across the board. It's very, very important that we all combine our forces in terms of supporting the startups, especially now. I think this is the time for us as India Inc. to come together. I work very closely with TIE, NASSCOM, just like I'm sure Chinu, Madhurima, and Shraddha, etc. This is the time for us to really find out how we can support our startups. Right? My big real focus is in how do corporates engage with startups, and how do we give the startups business. There's no point in giving a startup a grant. It'll only last that startup for another 2 months, 3 months. You're only escaping from the inevitable, right? That's why when Satya was in town in February, we launched the 100 by 100 by 100 program. What was that? How do we get 100 corporates to engage with 100 startups and spend $100,000? It's really something that we all need to come together to do, because that's the best way to support a startup.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Now, as promised, we have time for questions from the audience, and I can see a few coming in already. I'm going to cluster a couple of them together. One of the questions picks up on how we began this panel, which is innovation in the COVID era. So the question for the panel is, are there any innovations that you're seeing specific to this whole COVID phenomenon? For example, I know of some design startups working on how to do physical distancing design in malls, for planes, things of that sort. There are other people, of course, doing design-led innovation for masks, ventilators. That's a separate question. But there's a question here about, for example, alternatives to Zoom. There are concerns about security, etc., for many of these platforms. So is that an innovation area that you guys are looking at? Or digitization, digital transformation is the big buzzword now. So are you seeing, as accelerators, as investors, more of a push in companies who help other companies digitize? So what is the uniquely COVID aspect of innovation that you're seeing? Let's start with maybe you, Chinu.
So I think definitely, thanks, Madan. Actually, we have been looking at our companies. We have been looking at the landscape where the COVID has impacted. So I think, definitely I do see work from home, like I said in the beginning of the conversation, that itself will open up a lot of new ideas that's ripe for innovation, because Bangalore traffic has come down in the last 2 months. And I hope that remains the way. So I do expect a lot of startups in this space. And second thing, if you notice, during the work from home, there has been a lot of cyber attacks, especially in India. So in fact, we have 2 companies funded in cyber security space. They have been seeing good tailwind in this time, actually. So, definitely work from home around that landscape is going to be a big business for disruption. And this is not just for India, all over the world, actually, right? And second one I see is like the telemedicine, because all over the world, the countries have been challenged for healthcare infrastructure. We have good number of startups addressing healthcare, but I do see more funding going to healthcare, medtech, and telemedicine. Like in terms of diagnostics, how you can do remotely, and all this, the entire gamut of it, actually. And the other interesting thing, since you asked about some interesting ideas, And I do see a lot of 3D printing suddenly popping up, because if you want to build, people were worried about not able to supply the PPP equipments, and 3D printing came to the rescue in some cases. In fact, people have come up with ventilators quickly and with high quality. And one of our portfolio company, which actually we funded them to do alternative fuel cells into metal oxide air battery. So they took, opportunity this the lockdown time. They have come up with something called Corona Oven to disinfect all the, like your, in fact, actually who is the customer? French President Palace is one of the customers. So we got an order from there. And all over India, all the police departments have been using. So anything related to healthcare, medtech, telemedicine. Another thing is supply chain. And the other one is, which we talked about it, and the social distancing, community policing, using drones or even collecting data, because there's a lot of people are saying in US, like if you're able to predict these things a little earlier through data, it would have been an interesting play actually, right? I mean, you could have contained this to some extent actually. So there are many opportunities like this. I'm seeing it actually because of COVID, and it is definitely going to be a new normal. Look for trends. There are a lot of mega trends coming along these lines actually.
Spoken like an investor. Very good job, Chinu. You give some very good examples, lead sectors, etc. I would add maybe online gaming and online education to that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, in fact, for the paucity of time, I didn't add, but they are also.
Yeah, okay, sure. Latika, you want to add? How is Microsoft seeing any uniquely COVID-ish kind of things here?
Absolutely. I think I was just coming to, the education space. We have startups who are in the education space who suddenly have seen like literally a 600% increase in the number of, students using their platform. Secure Learning from Rajasthan, literally in 60 days saw it. As many of you are aware, our online platform Teams has been, really doing extremely well in the past 90 days since COVID. I see gaming as a very, very large area of, I would say, trends where you'll see the opportunity, not just social gaming, but, using gaming in the education sector. And the other day, I was a judge at the InVenture Changemakers competition, and there were 107 schools that took part in it over a period of 6 weeks, and it was fabulous to see what these kids came up in terms of the ideas that they came up, and it was really such practical good ideas. I hope the only thing I kept telling them is keep doing this even if you have school and spend time doing it, right? So that's where I'm seeing very, very interesting. And for me, the social distancing, tracking, tracing, etc. That's great, and you need it right now. And there are a lot. I've seen tens of them coming out of it. But what is more interesting and challenging is that existing startups who never thought that their solution would be relevant have pivoted extremely well and agile. That to me is the opportunity. What I encourage every entrepreneur out there to say is, okay, I was selling into the travel business, right, into the travel industry. Now I can't do the travel, but there must be, is my solution, and typically B2B SaaS solutions are horizontal solutions. It's not that you can only sell into the travel industry. You can actually sell it into BFSI with a bit of tweaking. Those are the startups that have done extremely well, right? Who have gone after a market that they didn't typically would, just because their first set of clients was in travel. So that's what I find as very, very interesting in terms of how the COVID times has created different areas of focus.
Madhurima, any new insights you can add to that? What are some uniquely coronavirus kind of things, angles you're seeing in innovation?
No, so I think they've covered it all, but how I would look at it is I'll divide it into three phases. One is, the current work from home phase that's going on for us, for a few months, so to say. Then it'll be, back to office. And the third will be, where you go back to, better than business as usual, which is, stepping the accelerator for growth, really. So I think each of these different phases will have new opportunities come in. So like in work from home phase, we are seeing a lot of focus on the cybersecurity, VDI solutions, for companies which never thought about work from home or didn't have employees with their, company laptop as such. So those kind of things This is where a lot of focus will happen on the automation, like chatbot solutions, so that even if people are not there sitting taking calls, there's a way to address queries and stuff. Once it's back to office, that's where as Chinu mentioned, the new normal, right? We are going to see a drastic change into the way the workplace looks like, and how we operate there, and that will require a different kind of solutions for the corporates to manage the workforce there, and that's another area of opportunity. And the third is, once things are mostly back to normal and the focus is on the growth mindset, how do we grow the business? And because of the fundamental shift in things like supply chain management, things like security, things like how do we conduct business, all those will open up new opportunities. So I think that's how people who are looking at starting up or pivoting should see which phase is going to come next, and probably tailor a solution that caters to that.
Great. Thanks, Madhurima. We can take one more question before we wrap up. And also towards the end, I want to invite all three of you to type in a few links. Maybe you can type in the links in this chat window here, and the organizers will copy paste it into the broader window afterwards. But the last question, a very interesting, almost a haunting kind of question, is now because of all this work from home and fear of interaction and closeness and all that stuff, are companies losing out on all these informal networks, these informal chats over the coffee room, chats around the water cooler, chats over toit and all these microbreweries when people get together and there's literally a collision of people and a collision of ideas. When will it be before we can get back to that informal processes for knowledge exchange?
Hello?
Yeah. Yeah, Chinna, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so sorry, actually, you had to repeat the question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, the question was on informal ways of sparking ideas. Now, because of all this safe distancing and work from home, etc., many companies are losing out on internal forums over coffee, beer, near the water cooler, etc., for ideas to exchange. Right now in Bangalore, we used to have almost 20 events a week for entrepreneurs to come and rub shoulders with each other, exchange ideas, network. All that is gone. So what do you see as substitutes for getting that kind of informal networking back, and how long will it be before it comes back into our daily lives?
So I think the way I look at it is, like I said, it's a new normal. I don't know how many of these events will come back, right? Because it may take time, a little longer, with the travel restrictions and social distancing restrictions. Hopefully it will come back after maybe some time, or people may realize you don't need all those things. You can use virtual webinars, you can use virtual conferences, because we have been operating for the last 2 months and without interruption, actually, for the last 2 months during COVID lockdown time. And I didn't see any problem, because many of the calls we used to handle through Zoom, and people were able to pitch in. In fact, we have taken some companies pricey. And similarly, I think there can be events can be organized virtually, like what you are organizing today, actually. And I think probably it will come back, but not to the level pre-COVID days. People are used to this, and I think probably you'll see more and more virtual events in the future. That's why I like it. And it's good. I like it.
Okay. Latika, what do you think? When can we come back to your office for all those nice Thai Bangalore events we used to host for us, etc.? When will all these informal things start again?
I wish I could be the one to say when we could all go back, right? I think my philosophy, Madan, always is the only thing I know is the present. I can't do anything about the past or anything about the future. So the in the present, we can all cry about the fact that we can't go to the water cooler, go out for a beer, or go and have a cup of coffee and discuss ideas. But it does. I mean, today we are just blessed. We are blessed with technology that we can actually talk to each other, and it doesn't matter where we are. Imagine if this happened 20 years ago. I really don't know. I think the whole world would have, fallen apart. Today, my son is in LA. I can speak to him and I can talk to him. And each one of us are, and thanks to 5G, 4G, Geo, in the country, everybody has access to technology, right? So you can either whine about the fact that, I absolutely, don't get me wrong. I miss the socializing, meeting people, talking to them and having that one-on-one connect. But we can't do it. But we do have technology that's available where we can talk to each other. This technology is available for free, right? Microsoft Teams has been given for free to anybody for the next 6 months. Whoever you are, you want to get together and chat and talk to each other. You have that option. So if you are an entrepreneur, nothing is going to stop you. You're going to go and seek, you're going to go and find, and you're going to talk. And the beauty about it is that today you don't have to worry about talking to that person, at the coffee table. You can have a cup of coffee virtually with somebody who's doing great work in Latin America or in the Ukraine. So look at it positively in terms of the opportunity. I've told my startups, here is the beauty. If you had to get on a flight and wait for an appointment to go and meet a corporate or CXO in Palo Alto, today that same CXO will meet you offline and you will save all the money on travel. VCs are thrilled that their marketing budgets don't have to now go. That typical, founder CEO who had to go there and make that pitch can sit here in Bangalore without hiring a costly resource in the US or in the Valley to do the same thing. So look at this as an opportunity for us that there is so much to be done. If you just realize that this is all beyond the entire world's control, not one person can do anything differently right now. Right. So for us, that's what I see as the opportunity.
Thanks, Latika, for framing it so creatively. Before we run out of time, Madhurima, you want to add something?
So I would just say, I believe in the resiliency of the human spirit. We'll find a way to do what we really want to do, right? Just to give you an example, before the bombings happened in India, right, the Taj one, who would have thought that we have to go through a security check at any public place that we used to go to, right? I mean, it was unthinkable. But today it's part of our life. It's the new normal for us, if you think from that time. We know that we have to do this and we do this. We found a way to, thwart that threat, really. Talking about, water cooler movements and informal networks, I think Latika summed it up beautifully, right? Technology has enabled us to do whatever we want. There are technology for free, technology that's being deployed very creatively by, people. I am actually talking more to folks than I was earlier, just because there's more time. I'm saving time on commute. I'm saving time, it's flying to other places. People are more available. They are more open because, overall time that it takes them is much lesser than earlier. And not just in the professional space, even in my personal life, I'm calling up people and wishing I would have never even thought of, purely because there was paucity of time. Right. So in some ways, while the way we interacted informally might have changed, it's still happening. It's just taking up a different shape. And I think by the time we come out of it, we would have all figured out. We're all for innovation in all aspects of life.
Thank you, Madhurima, for reminding us that there's always a new normal. I'm old enough to remember when there never used to be security checks in airports. There never were security checks in malls. And now we have to wear all these gear and science fiction kind of gear to get onto planes, etc. But we adjust and we have to move on. Unfortunately, we are almost out of time. So we have run over a bit over time, but I just want to ask all the panelists to sum up maybe in one sentence. What is your advice to our audience in terms of mood, mindset? How would you pick up the moods of our audience and inspire them? What is one send-off message, a parting word of thought you have for them? Madhurima, I'll start with you this time.
I'll just say, keep faith, do what you think is right, and put in your best efforts.
Put in your best. Chino, what would you say?
There are plenty of investors to invest you if you have a right idea.
Very good, very good. And Latika, you have the last word.
My suggestion is all of y'all go to Chino and ask him who those investors are.
Very good.
I will
very
definitely.
Good. Yeah. So I would add, for my sign-off, I would say keep a sense of humor. You have to laugh through all these issues. But just to connect all the different threads we heard today, I would say 3 C's: creativity, be creative, think of new things, think of things out of the box, always frame things differently. Second is co-creation. You may not have the answers. Somebody else has a piece. Learn how to co-create as a startup with the corporates that we just heard from, with the investors we heard from. And last but not least, community in the new normal is not just me and myself anymore, it's me and my community. You have to think about what are the larger implications of all of this. You have to guard your back and guard other people's back. I've got a friend who does research in political activism, and she's saying this is one of the most innovative times to be a political activist. Whether you look at what's happening in Delhi or the streets of the US or whatever, there's amazing creative stuff going around in how to get your message across and so on and so forth. But we are way past our time. I want to thank the audience for their questions. I want to thank our hosts for this brilliant production. And most of all, I want to thank our three brilliant panelists for sharing so much of the time in the middle of the week and a very busy time of the year to share their hard-earned insights on what innovation is going to be like in the future. So thank you all very much. Over and out. Have a good rest of the week. I was going to say weekend, but rest of the week. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
And thank you, Brand8, for putting this together.
Thank you, Brand8.
Thanks, Brandon.